Tough stuff here. So that's going to lead us into last topic here that we're going to wrap up on here. I've had a lot of clients ask me lately, what are some things that I can do to prep my dog for training, right? What are some things that I can do to get my dog to a place where, they're going to, they're going to be able to take the training process much easier. And the number one thing that I see on this list is developing the dog's food drive. I would say that 90% of dogs that come in either have zero food drive, right? Which means that they don't care about the treats. They don't care about their own food. They're usually free fed at home. Or they have completely inadequate food drive to be able to work through things. So yeah, maybe when you go grab the treat box out of the pantry, the dog gets a little excited and is like, hey, I'm just going to get a little freebie right now or something. But they don't care enough about that food drive to work through a lot of those kind of day-to-day basic stressors that are going to be involved in the training process. And I always say, obviously, we train plenty of dogs without food, right? We have plenty of dogs that come in that we're on a time crunch with, or, they just the owners don't care enough about that or whatever it may be. And we still get the job done and we're still able to train it. But that process just goes so much smoother when you have some motivation, right? We talked about the nail trim process. We saw how that one dog was able to overcome some of those stressors just using food, which is great, right? But in order to do that, we have to have the conversation of making sure that we're developing that food drive first with dogs if we want to start to counter condition things or to teach more complex behaviors or things like that, right? So I'm going to give people some tips here, the David the Dog Trainer way, on how to develop food drive with your dog. We're going to be talking about developing food drive real quick here. Man, I was just telling Josh, anytime I get back from vacation, I feel like it takes me like at least 2 hours of discussing dog training related things before all of the juices are just flowed back into my noodle.
And here we are.
I feel as we're going through this conversation, I feel like it's just like my brain's just like going from being a dried up sponge to just like to like a plump little, I don't know, shooting out all the information the way that it needs to be going.
Plump brain.
I'm catching up with things here. So bear with me, people. All right, so building food drive here. So again, one of the most important things you can do before the training process, it just helps with everything. Again, I just like positive only trainers and like people in vet clinics and stuff like that like to only utilize positive reinforcement or negative punishment, which is removing food to discourage a behavior. So nothing aversive, essentially, like that, right? I also think that the other end of the spectrum of just using negative reinforcement or positive punishment is also not it's not the greatest, because you're leaving out so much communication that you could be giving the dog, right?
Yeah.
And listen, anytime we have the ability to tell the dog both yes and no at the same time in a way that the dog really understands, the process is going to be better, right?
Yeah.
So build your dog's food drive so that we can do that more effectively, and so that they can learn more clearly and they can have a better understanding of things. We can decrease stress and we can make it more efficient in the long run. So here's some tips on doing it. So tip number 1, before you start training, immediately when you sign up for your training program or when you start deciding to consider your training program, I want you to take all the treats that are in your pantry and I want you to throw them away. Or give them to a friend if you don't want to,
There we go.
Get rid of things. You don't want to just throw them away, right? But you got to throw the snacks away. So a couple reasons. One, if you're just freely giving out stuff like that all the time, or just in your house when your dog goes pee or something when they're 7 years old, it's like you're immediately decreasing the value of anything else that you're giving your dog, which their food is what we want them to be valuable for. Because when we do the training process, we use the dog's primarily daily food, because it's cheaper, it's better for them. We can measure it in. We know we aren't overfeeding the dog at all. And since we use a ton of it, there's a lot of kibble that we feed our dog. So we have more rewards we can give. A lot of these treats and stuff, people don't realize how many calories are in them. So we looked it up the other day. I was asking a client, we're talking about developing food drive and stuff. And I asked the client, I was like, well, what extra stuff do you give the dog? They're like, literally nothing except, one of those greenies every night, right? And it was one of those jumbo greenies that they sold. And we looked it up online. That jumbo greenie had 400 calories in it.
Wow.
For a dog, that is insane amount of extra calories to be feeding them, right?
Wow.
Other things to factor in, obviously, the calories in all of the additional things you're giving, or just the kibble, right? Each bag of food has a different calories per cup to it as well. And this is something that I've done a lot of research on in the past to make sure that I know when different clients are coming in with different foods about how much that should be sitting at, you know? So eliminate all the snacks. In addition to that, eliminate all the extra fluff that you give them. A lot of people like to put all these like blueberries and like a little bit of wet food on it, and they like to boil up their chicken and do this and do that. And again, anything of higher value than that kibble you give the dog, you're decreasing the value of the actual kibble for, right?
Yeah.
I've never in my life seen a dog that was not motivated enough for their kibble. I've only seen dogs that are either overfed with kibble or given too much extra stuff, or they realize, hey, if I hold off on this, I'm going to get the good stuff later, right? I understand there's health reasons and stuff why people like giving all those things, but here's the thing. Your dog is probably going to be fine on kibble for just a little bit, and then once we finish the training process, if you really feel like adding all that stuff back in, you can, right? So eliminate all of those extra things, and we're going to go down to just a bare kibble diet, right? Second thing that you want to do here, you want to eliminate the dog's ability to free feed. So what is free feeding? Free feeding is when you're leaving food out all the time for the dog, right? You leave the bowl of food down, you fill it up, and you just leave it there all day for them to go and graze as needed. And I've heard every argument in the book for why we do this, you know. I've heard that, you know, my dog knows how to regulate how much they eat, which is bullshit because I don't even know how to regulate how much I eat.
Yeah. You know, it's always those people too. You look at their dogs and they're like, are you sure? Are you really sure he knows how to regulate?
You know, I've heard the argument of, you know, free feeding the dog, you know, teaches them to not just gorge anything that's in front of them. It teaches them only to eat until they're full, which again, listen, it's a dog. I want to have control over how much my dog is eating, right?
Yeah.
Here's some benefits to switching from free feeding. Biggest benefit here, digestive issues.
Yeah.
I have plenty of clients that their dog will just gorge themselves at random times throughout the day because they don't eat all day and they know it's down all the time. And then they get hungry, then they eat a ton of it, but it's at different hours throughout the day. So the dog is shitting unpredictably.
Yeah.
Right?
All the time.
They're having digestive issues. They're needing to go at 2 a.m. You know what I mean? Like, so you're going to get all of that on balance. You're going to have the dog on a clear schedule, right? Including puppies, because I see a lot of people fall into this trap with puppies as well, right? Other benefits to it, you're going to develop the dog's food drive immediately. Other developments to it, you're going to be able to utilize that feeding at specific times as you want to, as is going to be convenient with your schedule, right? You don't have to worry about all of the additional stuff behind it. So switching to a structured feeding time. So now we discuss, how do we do that? Okay, so first and foremost, pick up the bowl, put it away. Let's start at day one here. Day one of switching from free feeding to a structured feeding schedule here, right?
Yeah.
Right? So what you're going to do is, now listen, people are going to fucking come at me with pitchforks and torches here for this as well. But I baseline this stuff all, right? So like, so if we get a dog that comes in that is, say, under 45 pounds, I'm going to guesstimate right at about under 45 pounds. For the first 2 weeks of doing this, I feed the dog 1 cup a day. Half cup in the morning, half cup in the evening, right? Yeah. If the dog is over that, and here's the thing, honestly, unless the dog is like a Great Dane or a Mastiff or something that I know is going to be well over that. If it's like a 50 to like 75 pound dog, I'm going to do 2 cups a day. So 1 cup in the morning, 1 cup in the evening. And that's my baseline starting place here. So under 45 pounds, give that dog half cup, put it down in the morning, give them 5 to 10 minutes. At 5 to 10 minutes, if they do not eat all of it, pick that bowl up, pour that food back in the bag, and then try again for the evening. Now, this is the key with this. This is not rollover food. So let's say the dog eats half of it in the morning. They eat a quarter cup, right? Do not give them 3/4 of a cup in the evening thinking that's their total daily food allowance. And this is why. A lot of these dogs, they need to balance themselves out with this, right? So if we give them food in the morning, a lot of these dogs aren't used to eating or gorging themselves until later in the evening. But the problem is if we give them all of that food then, way too much in the evening, they're not going to be hungry in the morning again, right? So be prepared for the dog to skip that first meal and not eat any of it and then only get a half cup in the evening. And then that day they get half of their daily allowance of food because they learned that when I didn't eat what was presented in front of me, I didn't get it later, right?
Yeah.
So what happens then is the dog is a little extra hungry in the morning. Then they eat all of it that time, right? Then it starts to balance out. Then they eat all of it in the evening. And you know, sometimes this takes maybe 3 days, 4 days to fully balance out, but you have to stay strict with it. And you have to make adjustments as needed with it, right? So usually what I do then is I take it on a week by week basis. I see after that first week, did I adjust it enough where the dog's food drive is high enough, right? If I did not, if the dog is still leaving food in the bowl or whatever, then I have to cut it back a little bit more, right? So whatever it was, usually maybe I'll take a quarter cup out total from what that daily allowance would be. And then I would try it again in a week and I'd see where we are at. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for that dog to be pretty ravenous over the food without them dropping too much weight. And when I say dropping too much weight, I mean dropping past a healthy amount of weight because a lot of these dogs need to lose a little weight anyways, right? If for whatever reason I've dropped it too much and the dog is, you know, skin and bones and losing weight really quickly and stuff like that, all you have to do is up it a little bit, right? And as long as you make those adjustments, it's a very simple process. You just got to give the dog a little bit of time to balance out to that feeding process. Don't be nervous or scared that he seems hungry all the time because that's the point. We want the dog to seem hungry all the time. So that when I take out that food for a training session, they're like, fuck yeah, I want that. I want to work for that. I want to figure out what I need to do to get that, right? And, you know, that's what I'm looking for out of these dogs. My dogs, if I take food out at any time throughout the day, they get jacked up for it. They're super pumped. They know exactly what it means, and they'll basically do anything for that. And because of that, I've worked through the process in a way with their training where I don't need to use as many corrections for things because they're more eager to do the work for me. So that's the benefit of building the food drive and getting them to a point where you could use that throughout the training. So pretty simple process, but that's my way of doing it.
I mean, it is. It's a simple concept that I feel like people think is so hard.
So hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's developing food drive. It goes a long way. I made a post the other day on my personal page, just because I haven't really posted a whole lot from it lately. Most of the posts have been from the Miracle page, and you know, I was talking in it about a new dog I have in right now, Fritz, that I'm working with, and a lot of his training process. And Fritz had pretty good food drive when he started his training, and we made a couple adjustments to it to make it even better. And it was really cool because the video that I posted was 10 days into his training. And, you know, we had done some e-collar training, we had done prong collar training with him and stuff like that. But the level of reliability that I have with him already at this point, from the standpoint of his recalls, his down stays, his bed stays, all of that good stuff, it's so high already because he has such good food drive. Now, here's the thing. Like I said, I've given him corrections here and there for things and stuff, but they've been very few and far between because he has a more clear understanding of what I want him to do. So when I add in those corrections for what I don't want him to do, it's much more understood. He can retain them much quicker, and we don't have the additional fallout of after I give that correction, it takes like 20 minutes of working with him to kind of rebuild him back up into it, you know?
Yeah.
So those are the benefits of developing that food drive. And it's like, okay, cool. You got to ask yourself at some point, because some people, like I said, I don't know what it is about the food drive conversation, but some people get really, really, really stressed out about that. They're like, oh my God, they feel like they're starving their dog, or they feel like they're being so cruel to them through it or whatever it may be. But you got to ask yourself, it's like, okay, cool. Do I want to have my dog a little bit extra hungry throughout the day so that they're going to be able to work through some of this stuff and my training process is going to be nice and smooth? Or do I want to have to be hammering my dog over stuff all the time and using really high corrections and this and that to avoid doing that? It's like, listen, like I said, it's your choice ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Like, I prefer developing food drive because I don't think that the dog is going to have a lot of fallout and stuff from it. But you know, some people would rather just not go through that process with their dog, and these are the internal choices that I feel like every owner has to kind of abide by with a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of it because Devin was the one. She was like, listen, Bender's a small cattle dog, but she's like, half a cup of food in the morning, half a cup of food at night. That's it. Yeah. I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, are you sure?
It does. Listen,
you know,
there's some, and here's the thing, swinging back to this again, the bag of food, a lot of people like to, it's not even necessarily people's fault because they go off of the bag of food, you know, all the treats and stuff, that's your fault. But like a lot of people will overfeed just the amount of kibble because, you know, the bag of food just has 25 to 35 pounds should get this much, 35 to 45 pounds should get this much, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is that doesn't factor in any additional shit, right? It doesn't factor in the age of the dog. It doesn't factor in the activity level of the dog. It doesn't factor in the breed of the dog. And all three of those individual things are going to lead to a completely different calorie intake that the dog actually needs, or how much they burn, or how fast their metabolism works, or any of that kind of stuff. In addition to that, a lot of people will go off of their dog's current weight as opposed to their dog's healthy weight they should be at, right? So if the dog is 65 pounds but should actually be 45 pounds, if you're feeding them the amount it says for 65 pounds, they're going to continue increasing in weight because they're taking in more calories than they are burning.
That's true. That's true.
So you got to factor those things in as well. And then the last thing I tell everybody is dog food companies want to sell dog food. So they are going to say higher than what it actually should be.
Yeah.
So, and then, there are certain amounts, like the type of food that I feed my dogs. I feed Purina Pro Plan Sport Formula, and it's a very, very high calorie dense food, right? It's, I think, like 200 calories higher per cup than most dog foods on the market. So because of that, my dogs eat significantly less than they would if they were on another food. And sometimes, I'll fill up that bowl and it's like, it doesn't look like very much, and you give it to them and it's like, it's fine though. Like, I know that it's appropriate for them, right? Because I go off of the dog. I go off of, are they increasing in weight? Are they decreasing in weight? Or are they staying consistent to where they're at? And then I make adjustments from there as I need to.
Yeah.
And even with my dogs, I'll be somewhat fluid about it throughout the year. Like in summertime, if we're doing more walks and more hikes and this and that, sometimes I'll increase that a little bit. Maybe instead of 2 cups total a day, I do 2.5 or 2 1/4 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'll fluctuate it based on if I start noticing it's like they're a lot more active, they might be dropping a little bit of weight and stuff. And kind of go from there with it. But I'm going off of their amount of food drive that they have, right? I still want that food drive to be really high while making sure that they're maintaining a healthy weight. So, so that's like the number one thing that I could see you do to help the training process just infinitely as you're working throughout the thing. So,